The delay in our arrival this evening is due to the fact that this pattern of healing release, healing power, became focalized in Anne Brodie this evening, and there was a very wonderful outworking. I will not undertake to describe the outworking to you, other than to explain something of the principles involved, and to mention that when she was 4 years old, she was kicked in the head by a horse, and her forehead was badly fractured. And the pattern opened up through that, and she experienced the many different limitations of her life in the sense of physical health and illness, the times she had gone under anesthetic, etc., clearing the pattern, together with other factors which caused a very strong emotional pattern, particularly in her girlhood. And the cleansing has been most remarkable, most wonderful, both from the standpoint of the healing power made manifest in her body, and from the standpoint of the fact that by reason of her right response, that which was buried in the subconscious mind, about which there had been such deep emotional feeling, was cleansed away. And as she stays centered, it shall be with her as it is with all who let it work properly, that those things shall be no more remembered, nor come into mind. I wish to consider with you briefly tonight this pattern of the attunement current, the healing power of God made manifest. And then I'm going to ask Albert to come up and talk to you a little. He may repeat some of this from his own standpoint in his participation in it. But I would mention that when I was about somewhere around 6 or 8 months old, I had a fall. There was a trap door on the porch leading to the old-fashioned cellar, and my mother thought I was a safe distance away and she needed to go down cellar, so she opened the trap door and went down, and I followed her off the wrong end. A fall of probably around at least 6 feet. And of course I had never been able to remember the incident very clearly, being as it was at about 6 weeks or 6 months. But I've remembered it now. There was a bone broken under this right eye. Most people do not detect the fact unless their attention is drawn to it. But that accident, when I was somewhere around 6 or 8 months old, provided the starting point for the lifelong problem I have had with respect to my stomach, digestive problems. Now, if you attend the GPC class, you'll probably learn how that's all connected up and why. But in any case, there's a logical reason for it. And as Albert was working with me, and Edna had a share in it too, and others, Lorraine and Lillian, different ones, as working as servers. But in any case, the pattern opened up from the standpoint of that particularized accident. And beginning with that, the cycle worked through other accidents or serious injuries that I sustained through life. And the healing cycle working through that with respect to my body has been utterly wonderful, for which I thank God. In this we have a key opening a door which we had not had before. We have worked more or less through old injuries, yes. And so something of the principle has been in operation, but not in the sense that it is now. We consider an accident, for instance, in which the body is physically hurt. The mind takes cognizance of that. It's deeply impressed upon the mind and upon the subconscious mind, and one feels it. So, in relationship to that specific accident, during childhood, there is a focalization of all the factors of the life force, consciousness and awareness, feeling, at one point with respect to one thing. We may, in the ordinary processes of spiritual psychiatry, trace back to something that happened in childhood and use it to advantage, as we have in many instances. But here we have the fact that all of these factors are correlated. Generally, when you find something that had an emotional upheaval in it, it was perhaps somewhat in the mind, but primarily emotional, and did not correlate particularly with the physical body. So, the problem of establishing an alignment and inspiring the responding one to receive the correction from the standpoint of all three planes of being has been one of our greatest problems from the standpoint of the server. Because even though the individual might see something of the truth, there's generally been a resistance in accepting that in relationship to himself. Here we have an open door. An open door in relationship to accidents and injuries in childhood. When I say childhood, it would depend upon the nature of the individual, for instance. With Kathy, the particularized focalization that has, through the years, been an underlying factor in her difficulties is something that worked out when she was about 13 years of age. And the great toe on the right foot was injured when she jumped off of a bridge into some water. So starting from that one point, we have an open door to all of the physical factors which need particularly to be corrected in her health pattern. Now, you do not need at the moment to understand all of these things, and if you start speculating and trying to work it out within yourself, you can spoil it so that we cannot use it. So if your mind gets busy and you figure it all out in advance, let your own mind keep quiet and wait until it comes your turn and let your server work it out. But it's necessary that we tell you something about it. You can throw the opportunity away if you are so minded, but you shouldn't do it. Let it alone. Leave it in the hands of your server, because after all, he's the one qualified to help you through the cycle. And if you try to open it up all by yourself, you'll only spoil it for yourself and for whoever else might be blessed by reason of the outworking through you. This is a test for the moment, and it isn't working, is it? So, you do not need to try to figure it out, but we have to tell you something of it so that you will be in position to cooperate and so that you'll be in position to be ready. Because it may be that it will require that you go through any ill condition that you have had in your life all over again and really feel it. I'm not talking about just something that you might imagine. I'm talking about going through it and feeling it and taking it without breaking the vibratory pattern of response. You need to be ready to carry through properly without fighting or turning back, and just to let go and trust your server and God to carry it through properly. Now, I believe that for the moment that's about all I wish to say. I'm going to ask Albert Ackerley to come up for a moment.
This wonderful precedent-setting outworking that has taken place in Uranda's physical body, mind and heart has brought to focus an opportunity to make to you something in the nature of an announcement. Next week, and I expect it will be on Uranda's birthday, and in a sense his birthday gift to you, we are undertaking to commence an attunement program which involves every man, woman and child on the ranch. This attunement program sets up the machinery whereby each man, woman and child can receive an attunement at least once each week. That would be the minimum. If your requirement is greater than that, or if emergencies arise, then provision will be made to take care of such things. But on a regular basis there will be a time assigned to each person who so chooses to receive an attunement under conditions which are being established, which set up an environment which you will agree is almost ideal for such a service. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to tell you that the creative power which has been working through Ode these 9 months, and the love which has been manifesting through Sally and Ode, have made it possible for us to receive from them as a gift of their love and forward center number 1. Being equipped with such equipment as is necessary to render attunement service under ideal conditions. There are new cuts coming in that of a type that seem to lend themselves at this particular moment to attunement service. Arrangements being made to heat the room adequately, and we may even experiment with giving attunements under the sweet influence of divine music. So all the factors necessary for each of you to come under and remain under attunement service are coming into their place. I feel persuaded to say to you that this attunement program is not compulsory. It is no more compulsory than is the eating of breakfast or lunch or dinner. If it is compulsory, it is because the spirit within you informs you that this is something you need. And if you are not so compelled, then let us remember that the choice is yours. And then I would like to add that there may be among you some who wonder perhaps why you need an attunement. Maybe some among you feel that you're hale and hearty and vigorous and strong. You haven't got a cough in a carload, nothing wrong with you, and you may say, well, perhaps I don't feel I need an attunement and I won't participate in this program. I don't think I can say too strongly that any person who thinks he or she is so healthy that they don't need an attunement is guilty of judging. And I might question that judgment by saying, if you think that you don't need an attunement, can you prove to me that your heart is pure? Can you prove to me that your body is fit and ready to be called God's body on earth? If you can say those things, then you don't need an attunement. But if you can't say them, then you do need one. There has been, at least out in the world, and there may be some pattern of it here, the attitude toward attunements that we normally give toward aspirins. In other words, an attunement is a fine thing when you have, I was going to say a bellyache, but I won't, a pain in the gastric area, or an earache or something of that nature. In other words, attunements may have been looked upon as something to be called upon when an emergency exists. Well, if you have thought along those lines, you have been perfectly right, because attunements are for emergencies, and there is an emergency in every one of you, including myself. Uranda has last 2 days has, shall we say, overcome his emergency. But that emergency that is facing you is the question of whether you live or whether you die. That's what it is. Whether you live or whether you die. And that is the emergency that is facing every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. And blessed indeed are those who can have that emergency resolved for them through attunements. Because that is what this attunement program is offering to you. We are gathered here because we have developed a desire to live, or at least we have so said with our mouths. Now we are going to find out whether we mean it in our hearts, because this attunement program is going to find out whether or not you are willing to go through those changes which are necessary in order that you might live. Any person who thinks that he can receive an attunement without experiencing change is going to be rudely awakened. When you come to a server, or for that matter when you go to a doctor and seek his service, you are saying to him in effect, I want a change made in my body. That is at least what you say to a doctor. And when you come To a server you are saying, I want a change made in my body and in my mind and in my heart. And since that is what you ask for, you can expect to receive them. And when these changes come, as surely they will if you will let them, let us not complain that those changes are manifesting in our body. It may be necessary for some of you who receive this newly scheduled attunement service to experience what you might call a cataclysmic change in your body. Something may be required to take place to take you from where you are to the state where you ought to be, or at least move in that direction which you will not like. You may be required to pass through an experience such as Edna passed through. I mean that. Maybe a week, maybe a month, I don't know. But depending upon the state of your body and mind and heart, what is fastened in there and needs to be unfastened, so you will be obliged to go through that change that is required to move out the old and bring in the new. And it is going to be a test of your devotion to that vision which brought you here. And I know it is Uranda's hope, and it is mine, and I trust it is yours, that as these changes come, you will be able to have brought to your remembrance not only the conditions which led to the state of being which is in you now, but you will also remember those truths which you have heard from beloved Uranda, because it is those truths that will be brought to mind that will enable you to stay centered in the current of God's love and truth and life as these changes are taking place. And let us also remember that if we are to present God with a body on earth that he can use, that this body, of which our body is a part, must be a whole body as well as a holy body. Whole and holy. Not only in its physical aspects, but in its emotional and mental phases. And there is only one way by which that body en masse can be made whole and holy, and that is by the body in its individual aspects going through the resurrection, arising from that dead state in which it is in now. And so this attunement program is being offered to you not merely as a means, in fact, not as a means of disposing of your temporary aches and pains. That is the least purpose for which it is being offered. It is being offered to you as the only means, and I will underline that and even set it up in neon lights, as the only means by which your visions, which brought you here, can be fulfilled. I know of no other way by which any human being can become what he ought to be, physically, mentally, emotionally, and thereon spiritually, without attunements. Can you think of any other way? Was it not only this morning that, and last night, and several occasions of late, that Uranda has spoken of the necessity of having a point within you, correlated and in harmony with a point outside of you? That is what the attunement is offering to you. So that field, that creative field, is established whereby these changes, which are vital to your movement toward divine manhood and womanhood, can be brought about. And so next Wednesday is going to be, I believe, something of a blessed event. Indeed, something is going to be born as a functioning unit here, and something as the result of it will be born in each and every one of you according to your response. And from my point of view, I would urge each and every one of you tonight and before Wednesday comes to do a lot of deep thinking in regard to what Uranda has said and what it has been my privilege to express to you regarding the vital importance of this attunement program to your future as a member of this body. In fact, painful as it is to say, unless you enter into this attunement program with enthusiasm and with willingness to accept what the Lord finds it necessary to provide for your own recovery from the state of perishing, then you have made your own choice between life and death. There is only one choice, or two choices, and I think I know what your choice will be. I would also ask you not to, as Uranda already has done, not to speculate too much or to come to the attunement service on the basis of anticipating what is going to happen. Uranda doesn't know what is going to happen, and I don't know what is going to happen, and none of the serving staff can predetermine just how or when the essential changes you require are going to manifest. It may be that some of you will experience a rapid and I could say devastating change almost immediately. It may be that in others it may require 3 or 4 attunements before the vibratory factors are in alignment, which will permit you to go through the divine operation, as indeed it will be when that particular moment comes. So please don't come to the attunement room with fear and trepidation. Come as well as you've always come before to seek an attunement, expecting to experience in your body the flow of God's love and letting what come and accepting it with thanksgiving.
Thank you, Albert. I would like to add 1 or 2 points here, or at least emphasize 1 or 2. Remember Albert's positive assertion that it would work in you, that you would receive it if you let it. And that is very true. It isn't a question of whether or not it can work in you. It is only a question of whether you will let it work in you. And unless there is a true yielding, a true willingness to let the divine design come forth without regard to your own human concepts and beliefs, desires or determinations, you cannot hope to share with any adequacy that which is offered. It will not come by trying, but it does come by letting go. But do not expect your server to do it for you. If you expect your server to do it for you, if you come and flop down like a piece of inert flesh, like a carcass, and say, well, I'm letting go by the mere fact that I'm here and I've flopped down. And you're there like a quarter of beef or something. And you expect your server to do it all for you. It will not work. We're not interested in attempting to give an attunement to a quarter of beef. So, I feel very deeply that here we have the opening of a forward step which has tremendous significance, something for which I deeply thank God. Tonight let us meditate for a few moments upon the principles involved in our individual and collective return to God. We may be part way in our journey. I have not questioned the fact of your start along that path. There is blessing and commendation in the fact that one begins the journey. But the beginning is of small avail unless one completes the journey according to the divine plan. The Master pictured the necessity by the story of the prodigal son, who found that that upon which he had been feeding was merely the husks, the empty shell of that which he had thought to get. And so he decided to return home to the Father. And here we are in the process of returning to God, that being centered in God, that being in the Father's house, we may truly serve others and truly inspire them to arise and leave the husks behind and return to God. In this connection, I wish to read to you from the 3rd chapter of the book of Malachi. Even from the days of your fathers, even from the days of your fathers, that would carry back to the time of your first birthday, it would seem. From the time of your birth, even from the days of your fathers, ye are gone away from mine ordinances, and have not kept them. To a certain degree, within a certain range, you may have, from your earliest years, sought to serve God and keep the commandments, etc. And this is not in condemnation, but in a recognition of a basic fact. The Lord here is speaking of the ordinances, mine ordinances, the ordinances of life, or as it's put in another place, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven, And canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? When the Lord says, mine ordinances, is he not speaking of the ordinances of heaven? What other ordinances would he be talking about? And so the question in the great examination is, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven, and canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? For the ordinances of heaven are supposed to have dominion on earth. But they cannot unless we return to God. From the days of your fathers ye are gone away from mine ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. There are many very interesting things revealed in this text. First, each human being who begins the return journey to God must acknowledge that he has robbed God, that he has taken from God for his own use that which belonged to God. In any moment that you use your mind, your hands, your lips, your ears, any part of your being, for your own purposes without regard to the purposes of God, you are robbing God. For you are taking something that belongs to God and using it for your own purposes. Yet ye have robbed me in tithes and in offerings. What are the tithes and offerings? What are your offerings? The expressions of thought and word and deed are all of the offerings which you offer into life designed to be placed before the throne of God, or are some of them designed for the altar of Baal? What are your offerings into life? Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now. Isn't that an interesting expression? And prove me now. Not 1,000 years from now, not after you're dead and gone, but prove me now, saith the Lord of hosts. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven. You are the windows of heaven. But you must be opened before the things of heaven can be poured out into the earth. As long as you are closed tight, as long as you are given to your own purposes without regard to God, you cannot be used as a window of heaven. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. The abundance of God's giving, so that in our receiving, though it be to full capacity, there must be the overflowing. And God is offering you some very special blessings. They are coming out of the east, from the garden that God planted eastward in Eden, coming out of the future, that you may receive them and be the means of their manifestation. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you, the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Blessed ones, until you recognize yourselves as windows of heaven, and until you yield to God's opening power, you cannot know the fulfillment of this wonderful promise. So, are you ready to let yourselves be opened? By the hand of God? Or will you keep yourselves tightly closed, resisting the opening power? For you cannot return to God unless you let yourselves be truly opened. And until you return to God, He cannot return to you in any sense that has meaning to you. You must first return to Him. And that return comes only as you let the power of God open you, that you may be an open window of heaven, not a closed and darkened window covered with dirt and cobwebs, so thick the sunlight of God's love cannot penetrate. No, let yourselves be opened. Here is the word. Even from the days of your fathers are ye gone away from mine ordinances. So it is time to return to the ordinances of life, the laws, the principles of life, and function under those ordinances, that we may know them and share in setting the dominion thereof in the earth. And when that dominion is set in the earth of our own bodies, and minds, and hearts, it shall express through us. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? And canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? From the days of your fathers ye have gone away from mine ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? I wonder if any of you have ever heard that question asked, or have you ever asked it? but wherein shall we return? Will a man rob God, or will a woman? But ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. When the expression of your life is an offering to God all the time, it will make a difference. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. So let it be. I thank thee, Father, for these blessed ones here who are learning to share in letting thy kingdom come, who are learning to let themselves be opened by the wonder-working power of thy hand, that they may of a truth share in letting thy abundant blessings flow forth into the earth to all who will receive, whosoever, wheresoever they may be, that all thy children everywhere may truly return to God. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever, in the Christ. Amen. Remember the point that I made in relationship to myself, that certain very definite physical ailments and limitations which I have worked through all my life had their origin at about the age of 6 or 8 months. In other words, regardless of those limitations, regardless of any discomforts or sufferings or handicaps, what has been done thus far in my life has been done. In other words, with respect to that or any of the other factors involved, I did not permit those things to stand as reasons why I just couldn't serve the Lord effectively. Now, there is a tendency among human beings, strange as it may seem, to say, well now, I have this handicap, I have that ailment, I have the other difficulty. I just happen to remember, since Uranda and Albert were talking this evening, that I fell out of the crib on my head when I was 9 months old, and now there is a reason why I just can't do what I ought to do. I'll just sit back now. I have a really good excuse, you know. And no wonder I just never could get it done before. I don't care what happened to you, how many times you fell out of the crib on your head. There's still no excuse. No matter what the limitation, there's still no excuse. You can do your job regardless. As long as the limitation is a prison to you, how shall you be delivered from it? No. You have seen my life. You've been around me enough to know. Have I allowed these things to be a prison to me? Have they been? No. How often we've heard the story of Paul and Silas in prison in the old days, and how they were delivered by the hand of the angel. But what was the peculiar thing about the situation before they were delivered? The peculiar thing was that it was not a prison to them. What were they doing? They were singing and praising God. And though there were walls and barred doors, they were not in prison, because those things did not imprison them. Well and good. Here we have a wonderful example of that which is of the divine pattern for you. As long as you, within your prison, are inclined to moan and groan and say, "Oh, how terrible it is. I've been here for, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 50 years already in prison, and I guess I'm in for life." Well, then don't expect to come out of it. When you reach the point where you are not in prison, regardless of the things that imprison you, then we shall see about the day of deliverance. I've waited a number of years. I'm past 40 now. I started to live. So, the point is that those years and the 21 years and more of my ministry, and I come to this point before in the outworking cycle of things I can begin to be delivered from the prison of certain very definite physical limitations. Perhaps you didn't know it. I don't suppose I talked about it too much. But I've done my job fairly well. The point then is, are you still in prison? If the limitations in your body and mind and heart are a prison to you, then do not expect deliverance through attunements or anything else, because the powerful hand of the angel cannot bring you forth from your prison until that thing, that condition, that situation in body or mind or heart is no longer a prison to you. Then the hand of the angel shall deliver you, just as it was with Paul and Silas in the days so long ago. Good night, and God bless you.